Hi everyone, my name is Memo. This is my channel Houseplanty Goodness, which essentially is a safe space for me to properly geek out about the thing that I'm really passionate about, which is my tropical houseplants, and talk a bit more to you guys about some of the plants that I own, my experiences with them, some tips and tricks that have worked for me, as well as an occasional video with some scientific facts. So if you do like this video, please do drop a like down below. It gives me an indication that you're enjoying this type of content and I should be creating more like this. And if you're really into houseplants, or you're just getting into houseplants at the moment and you want to have more information like this more frequently, do consider subscribing. Every week I try to bring out between 2 or 3 videos on all topics relating to tropical houseplants. So yeah, let's dive into the topic for today, shall we? So today's topic you might be able to see in front of me, and I will bring this plant in a bit closer so you might be able to see it a bit better. This is a hybrid philodendron. So this is a hybrid between the verrucosum, and you might be able to see some of the red backs of the leaf, and the Melanochrysum, so you can see that velvety sheen and that leaf shape that you would normally get with the Philodendron Melanochrysum. So this is a hybrid between the two, and I think sometimes you might be getting retailed as the Philodendron Splendid. That's maybe the name that people have given it. And let's talk a bit more about why this specific one looks a bit janky. So, bit of a very long story short, I got this plant probably a few months ago, maybe about 9 months ago, and it was doing really well. It had some very nice large leaves, and it was growing slower than I was expecting it. Based on a lot of planty friends that have got this plant as well in their connection, they were saying it was possibly one of the easiest plants that they had. It was growing really fast as well, and big leaves all of a sudden. I was not experiencing that. It was a particularly slow plant for me in my situation, and unfortunately I made the mistake of possibly leaving it a bit too long to investigate further, because there's always that fine line between, is it root rot that's causing this problem? And if it isn't root rot and I then disturb the roots of the plant that's already stressed and going through things, I'm going to stress it out even further. So maybe I shouldn't have left it as long, but then in the end I did discover that there was some root rot. And the way that happened, I still had it in terracotta, I still had it in a light airy soil mix, and this is what I keep saying, you can always try your best, but it doesn't always necessarily mean that things are going to go smoothly. So with this plant, I had it maybe for a bit too long on a heat mat, and I think the difference between drying out fully and then flushing it through with water caused a bit of shock to the roots, when it probably would have liked a bit more moisture left in the actual root ball for a bit longer, and it then started causing root rot, and it caused root rot, and the rot kind of got to it quite quickly because there wasn't an awful lot of roots for how big the plant or how much foliage was on it, which I sometimes find with some philodendron. The root mass in the bottom doesn't need anywhere near as much as you would imagine for how much of a plant there is at the top as well. So what I then did is I cut the plant, I took it out, I took all the rot off, I cut it off entirely. I actually took some inspiration from one of Kaylee Ellen's videos, where she was talking about how you would deal with plants that have come over in shock or with root rot or with no roots at all from importing from the Far East. So I did something really similar, and this might hurt a lot of people to know, but there was about 6 or 7 leaves, really big leaves. I cut all of them off. I'd left a very small leaf which has since died back since it's been able to root. You'll be able to see here that I've got some sphagnum moss, and the reason why I did this is because there was some roots at the very bottom of the stem that I cut, but nowhere near as much as there was up here. But because I didn't want to bury the whole stem into soil when they didn't have great roots yet, I didn't want to cause more rot. So I added in some sphagnum moss around there just to keep some of that moisture around those roots up here, and they've hopefully by this point gone all the way and grown into the soil media, because it's growing quite nicely. You might be able to see that one of the first leaves that came out a bit janky. I didn't mind, and this is why I'm saying this is just cosmetic. The plant is still using this leaf to photosynthesize, and when you're going with no leaves, this is better than nothing, basically. So I left it on there, and even now I'm leaving it on there. It's got a new leaf that came through that's really good, and due to disturbing the apical dominance, so when you chop a plant back, you release that dominance that you get on the main stem and you get branching stems. There's a video of this on my channel if you want to read it, if you want to see a bit more about it. But you can see I've got 2 growth points, and there was also a third one growing somewhere previously. I can't find it for right now, but if I've got the 2 branches, I'm more than happy. And you can see there's a brand new, very large leaf that's coming in, because if it's coming in that large and it still hasn't even unfurled, it would probably be a nice big leaf. I might need to give it a slightly better support structure here. But on the bits of the plant that I cut, and I'll explain why I took off the leaves, you take off the leaves and leave maybe 1 or 2 leaves on there, because when the plant doesn't have any roots and it's got all these leaves that it needs to support, it can't do too many things at once at that point in time. So it needs to maintain those leaves so it won't grow the roots. So if you relieve some of the pressure of the too many leaves to kind of keep photosynthesizing, it will then push down the energy towards the bottom of the stem and start rooting out, which is essentially what you need, because then you'll get the longevity of the plant and eventually you'll get the leaves coming back in. That's absolutely no problem at all. But you can see where I cut it. I also had some tiny cuttings that I have now since rooted out and propagated. So you can see, interestingly enough, that wasn't the first leaf. This was the first leaf. The second one came, it had a few issues, but then I can see the third one that's now coming in is going to be absolutely fine. And actually now, in this setup, I can see what people mean. It does grow quite fast. Granted, this propagation is taking its time, but it doesn't have a lot of stem and it doesn't have a lot of root yet, but it's getting there. This one, however, has started to grow some decent roots, and it is growing quite, I mean, I think this leaf fully unfurled a week and a half ago, and there's another one that's pretty much ready to go already. So I've got high hopes, hopefully, for this one at the moment. You can see I've taken it out of terracotta. It's no longer sitting in on top of a heat mat, and I've got it in a net pot, which means there's even more aeration going through. Don't worry too much about the white that's around the pot. That is mainly salt deposits from the water, but it does keep the plant really happy and it's growing quite nicely. I think that's everything I wanted to say about the Philodendron Splendid, or the philodendron hybrid between the verrucosum and the Melanochrysum. If you've got any questions, comments, if you've got this plant, if you're thinking about getting this plant and you want to have a bit more of a discussion, drop it down below and let's have that conversation. And yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. I'm hopeful that I shall see you here soon. And yeah, have a great rest of the day. Thanks.